Claude Fable 5, GPT-5.6 Sol, and Grok 4.5 are the three flagship coding agents everyone's pointing at real repositories right now. So I ran their published benchmarks, pricing, and speed numbers against each other across 5 tests to find out which one actually deserves the work. The biggest surprise in the data, the model with the fastest headline speed claim, is locked behind an access tier almost nobody can actually turn on yet. Let's start with the number that decides whether an agent workflow is sustainable at scale. Grok 4.5 charges $2 per $1 million input tokens and $6 per million to output tokens, with cached input at just $0.30. GPT 5.6 Sol sits in the middle at $5 and $30, cached at $0.50. Claude Fable 5 is the priciest of the three at $10 and $50, cached at $1. That's not a small gap. Grok 4.5 is 5 times cheaper than Fable 5 on input tokens and over 8 times cheaper on output. But raw token price isn't the whole picture. According to the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, which measures cost per completed task at max reasoning effort, GPT 5.6 Sol comes out to about $1.04 per task against roughly $3 for Fable 5. Grok 4.5 wins this test clean on token pricing. But keep that AAII number in your back pocket, because it matters more once we look at what each model actually produces. That's Sol running at close to a third of Fable 5's real cost, not just its sticker price. My name is Brian, and I spend my week buried in pricing pages, benchmark leaderboards, and model cards, so you don't have to cross-reference 5 sources before picking a model. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Here's where the sticker price stops telling the full story. On SWE Bench Verified, the benchmark most people actually search for, GPT 5.6, Sol scores 96.2%, just ahead of Claude Fable 5's 95.0%. Grok 4.5 trails at 86.6%, and that number is community reported, not an official vendor figure, so treat it with a little more caution than the other two. On Terminal Bench 2.1, which tests real agentic terminal work, Sol leads again at 88.8% against Fable 5's 88.0% and Grok 4.5's 83.3%. On DeepSWE 1.0, a long-horizon software engineering test, Sol pulls further ahead at 73% versus Fable 5's 66.1% and Grok 4.5's 62.0%. Fable 5 does have one place it clearly wins, SWE Bench Pro, a harder and more realistic variant where it scores 80.3% against Grok 4.5's 64.7%. GPT 5.6 Sol has no published figure for this specific benchmark. Fable 5 also leads Frontier Code's hardest diamond split at 29.3%, more than double what Anthropic's own Opus 4.8 managed there. Added up across the Artificial Analysis Coding Agent Index and GPT 5.6, Sol leads the field outright at 80 points. GPT 5.6 Sol wins this test. Fable 5 stays competitive and even leads on the hardest single benchmark, but across the benchmarks that matter to most agentic workflows, Sol is ahead. Coding quality means nothing if you're staring at a spinner. On standard throughput, Grok 4.5 posts an official 80 tokens per second. GPT 5.6 Sol runs slower at a community-reported 61.7 tokens per second. Time to first token tells a similar story. Grok 4.5 answers in roughly 13 to 17 seconds, while Sol can take up to around 154 seconds at max reasoning effort before it says anything at all. Grok 4.5 wins the standard speed test clearly, but there's a wrinkle here worth flagging before we move on. GPT 5.6 Sol has a separate ultrafast mode built on Cerebrus hardware that hits 750 tokens per second, 14 times faster than its standard mode. It's also not something most people can access right now, and we'll come back to exactly why that matters in a minute. For this test, judged on what's actually usable today, Grok 4.5 takes it. That's a genuinely huge number. Stick with me because the last 4 tests are where this decision actually flips. Big refactors and long agent sessions live or die on context size. Claude Fable 5 offers a 1 million token context window. GPT-5.6 Sol edges it slightly at 1.05 million. Grok 4.5 sits at half that, 500,000 tokens. There is a real caveat on context and output limits worth naming before we score it. On max output per request. Next up is deployment and modality, the test that quietly decides whether the rest of this comparison even matters. On deployment and modality, Claude Fable 5 pulled clearly ahead once the workload got real. There is a real caveat on deployment and modality worth naming before we score it. So Claude Fable 5 takes deployment and modality, and the scoreboard shifts its way. Here is where Claude Fable 5 clearly pulls ahead of the field. Now, here is where GPT 5.6 Sol clearly pulls ahead of the field. Here is where Grok 4.5 clearly pulls ahead of the field. Pick the one whose single biggest strength matches the job in front of you today. One thing the docs never spell out will quietly cost you if you miss it. If this helped, the next breakdown on the channel goes even deeper.